Without energy, it would not be possible to have all the great amenities which are available to us humans in the rich part of the world. Healthcare, transportation, communication, heat, water, electricity, machines, and products that make our life much easier than in the past. We have had slavery for thousands of years, but when we learned how to make carbon fuel our slave, we learned how to be civilized people. Ever since carbon energy was discovered, its use has seen steady growth, decade after decade, and this trend continues. Here's the situation. For the last 100 years, most of the energy production was built in the OECD countries. But around the year 2000, something happened. OECD countries stopped installing new energy production capacity, and at the same time, the build-out of new energy production in other parts of the world increased rapidly. By 2030, OECD countries will have 15% of the global population, whilst Asia and Africa will be home to 80% of the global population. In the next 3 to 5 decades, we will see an increase in the global energy markets that beats anything we've seen in the past, and Asia and Africa are the main drivers of this growth. That led us to take a look at what could potentially supply all this new energy. In order to understand this, let's take a look at energy sources during the last 30 years. We start in 1990, where fossil fuel provided 80% of the global energy mix, and wind and solar provided less than 1%. Now, I want you to imagine how this has changed in the last 30 years of your lifetime. Now we will step forward 5 years at a time up until today. As you noted, it only changed a few percentage points here and there, and still today fossil fuel provides 80% of the global energy mix. One of the problems is that wind and solar has grown, but not much faster than the growth of the global energy market. Thus, wind and solar has had a hard time just keeping its share of the pie in the last 30 years. Now, the big question is, what will this pie look like 10 years from now? People often ask us, couldn't we build out twice as much nuclear in the next 10 years? The answer is yes. From a pure physics and math standpoint, we could easily do that. But we think it is unlikely to happen, because old nuclear has a bad reputation and is expensive to build, and has been plagued by cost overruns and political turmoil in the past. Nuclear will undoubtedly increase in the energy mix during the next 10 years, but not as much as wind and solar. What else could we do? We believe the long-term answer is thorium molten salt energy. Thorium is a metal in the periodic table, and we get it out of the ground through mining, just like we mine for copper and iron. There is enough thorium to provide all the energy for humanity for thousands of years, and if mined on an industrial scale, it costs less than $100 for the energy you consume your entire life. Thorium is found in all countries of the world, and the difficult part is not the mining, it is converting thorium into energy efficiently. In order to convert thorium into energy, we need a machine called a molten salt reactor. This was shown to work back in the 1960s, but it is not until today that we have sufficient knowledge and production techniques to make this happen economically. Copenhagen Atomics and 20 other groups around the world are in a race to build these molten salt reactors. Many different designs have been proposed, and some want to cut corners to get something online with low efficiency and bad economics, but fast. In Copenhagen Atomics, we are focused on building something that can be mass manufactured on an assembly line. The first commercial model will be a 100 megawatt waste burner. For many decades, installation of nuclear power has primarily been driven by governments. With the build-out of nuclear energy in Asia and Africa, we believe that this is going to change. We believe the primary driver will be private companies and private consortiums. They will install nuclear power for factories and potentially sell electricity to the local community. We note that today only 15% of global energy is electricity, while 20% is industrial heat. This makes molten salt energy a very attractive solution because it can provide both and even be stored at a low cost. to even out fluctuating energy needs. Many such communities in Asia and Africa have considerable biomass as a waste stream from food production. This can be converted to CO2-free synthetic fuels, and they often have a need to produce fresh water or treat wastewater. All these energy needs are a perfect match for the Copenhagen Atomics waste burner. Copenhagen Atomics is soon going to open a new funding round where you can support the work that we do. We will use the money to build the first non-fission prototype of our reactor,